morning, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome on our special series of Market Masters, a space where the finest brains on Dalal Street get together to discuss the way forward and how to navigate the next 6 to 24 months. Joining us on the show is none other than Miss Devina Mehra. She's the founder and CMD of First Global, runs a very well-known PMS business, and is a past master at volatility, at picking the stocks at the right time and riding them to their fresh highs. Namaste Devina ji, a very warm welcome. As always, it's such a pleasure to host you. While domestic markets seem to be perking up as far as prices are concerned in the mid, small and large caps, it's this incessant, how should I say, drumbeat to invest overseas at a time when the domestic markets really haven't done much over the last 18 months. How are you watching this as a sentiment indicator for the contrary?
Namaste, Shell. Thanks for having me. And you mentioned that I run a PMS. Actually, what I have run for longer has been global portfolios and global funds. So that's a lot longer than I've run the India PMS. And we've been global since 1999. So we were not just the first Indian, we were the first Asian members of the London Stock Exchange as Japan, and the next year of the US broker dealer, which is NASD. And we've been covering all those stocks since then. आपने बोला वो 18 months वाली बात, so I have not been advocating going global for the last few months. I have been advocating it for many years, because A, you should not put all your eggs in one basket. B, India is less than 3% of the world or global market cap, so there's no reason why 90 or 95% of your, or 100% of your investment should be here. And one number which I always give, that when I started working, the dollar was 12 rupees. So in the course of a career, it has depreciated, rupee has depreciated 90%. So when you're talking of financial goals, which are 10, 20, 30 years hence, you cannot forget the globe. However, right now I see a lot of people kind of hawking global investing and global products, especially gift city schemes, simply because they're not getting assets in India, because India hasn't done well, so they think they can gather assets there. And I am frankly very scared of this, because a lot of people who are doing this have no idea what they are doing. They do not have any understanding of global markets or global stocks, and those are very complex companies. So it's very seat of the pants kind of thing. Or वो जो हिंदी में कहावत है ना, नीम हकीम खतरे जान. So that is what I see in action in all the gift city schemes. If you see, most of them for the last 6 months are down, even though the global equity markets are up. For the last 12 months also, almost none is even close to the benchmarks. So this is the result of not really understanding what you're doing. I mean, you can't some of those fund managers themselves had never invested in global markets 2 years ago. And now suddenly they are coming on podcasts and saying, I'm an expert. Now, for example, semiconductor stocks, if you take, I mean, people thought first, let's buy the AI stocks, which is the 7 big US tech companies, the NVIDIA, Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla. And they did not realize that story had started unraveling in 2025 itself, because 5 of those 7 stocks underperformed the S&P in 2025. 2023 and 24, they drove the S&P. But that they didn't understand. People who were investing so-called all these in these managing these global schemes. Then they thought, oh, easy thing is to go for semiconductors. Now, semiconductor, again, these are everything from Intel to AMD and Micron and Samsung, TSMC, Qualcomm, all these companies we have covered for the last over 25 years, from the early 2000s. And we know exactly how volatile these are, how cyclical this sector is. So people think, oh, semiconductor is growing very well. By growth बहुत अच्छा है, but they don't understand that these companies can equally go the other way, and that's been the long-term history. So that's what scares me. So yes, you should invest globally, but you should go with somebody who knows what they're doing. For example, right now, I don't know how many people know that the US mid and small cap index, Russell 2000, has done almost 2.5 times what the S&P has done this year. Or, totally old economy,
Right.
Dow Jones
Ma'am,
Transportation Index has done better than the S&P. So, now the story is still that AI and semiconductors are the only game in town, but that's not what the actual numbers are. So, be very careful when you go global, but yes, you must go global.
Ma'am, I think the best way to look at such marketing stunts is label them as a contrary indicator. These are blooms that come at the wrong time of the market at inflection points, and for seasoned investors such as you, they are milestones on where not to put money, and look at those sectors with a jaundiced eye. People live and learn. These kind of things will happen for the next 500 years or so. But thank you for raising this alarm bell. And actually it's an alarm bell क्योंकि मेहनत का पैसा जाता है. We are chasing fads instead of earnings, and we are chasing price instead of value. It ends very badly, as both of us and many of our peers have seen it over the last 3.5 decades. Now tell us, ma'am, what is your allocation in terms of equity, within equity, Indian equity and overseas? Are you by any chance enthused with the developments that have happened in Indian markets over the last 2-3 months or so?
Okay, so before coming to the allocation, let me just talk about the Indian market. So if you look at the major 42 country indexes in the world, this year India has been in the bottom 3-4. And normally we have seen that very often some of the countries which are in the bottom 5, 2 or 3 of them next year are in the top 5. So to that extent, the underperformance is actually you can say a positive indicator. The other thing which I've been talking about last few months has been that suddenly, for the very first time, all my fellow fund managers who only used to talk about the quote unquote India growth story are now for once enumerating the risks. So that, and sentiment is a contra indicator. I think I would have said it on your show also at some point, that this is what research studies around the world show. This is not my opinion. This is that when sentiment is overbuoyant is when you should be cautious, because usually the next period returns are below normal, which was, the case if you see the first 10 months of 2024. And when sentiment is at a down, the next period returns in terms of probability are likely to be above normal. And I just collated this data and wrote about it in my Mint column, looking at mutual fund inflows from 2004 to today and mapping it onto the peaks and troughs of the market. And it is so clear that the mutual fund inflows peak after the market peaks, and they bottom out after the market bottoms out. So they always lag the market. So if you look at that also, now you see the mutual fund inflows had really tapered off. I didn't see the June number, but the previous 2 months, the number of SIP accounts opening was a net negative, meaning more accounts were getting closed than getting opened. So all these are contra indicators that show that. And March itself, I had said that our indicators are showing that the market is around the bottom range. I don't know whether it will start moving in 3 weeks or 3 months, but the downside was limited. So which is what we are seeing now. In terms of the market itself, you look at this quite closely. So I'm sure you know this, that in 2025, while the indexes in India were up, the median stock was down. And for a large part of 2025, the market was extremely narrow. Around September, I think it was like only 10 to 12% of the stocks were outperforming, as against an average of 30-40%. So now the market is much broader. But right now, if you see, it is the large caps which are dragging down. Now we were looking at the 15 heavyweights in the Nifty 50, which have about, I think, 63-64% weight. and 9 out of the 15 last I saw were negative for 2026. So, I mean, we all know of IT, but even things like, Mahindra and Mahindra or Bharti or HDFC Bank. So there were a whole lot of heavyweights which are still underwater for 2026. And, the average stock now, unlike last year, is doing better than that.
Ma'am, yeah. So while this is all data which is in front of us,
Yeah, I didn't answer your question on the allocation. So, I mean,
our job is to. Please continue.
Allocation question, yeah. So, I mean, see, as I said, that India is only a microscopic part of the world. So, I normally anyway have 80% global, 20% in India, which because of price action last year, because last year my India multi asset portfolio did 7%, the global portfolio in rupee terms did 42%. So, average was something like 37%. So, now I have an even greater allocation globally. So in our global funds, we have right now about, I think, 72% equity. We are underweight US, and about half of the rest, half and half, are fixed income and commodities. I mean, commodity, even if we take through equity, we treat it as a commodity exposure. So that would be broadly the breakup there. But as I said, I am heavily overweight. Always, I mean, the majority is global.
Okay, fair point. So, where within India do your statistical models prefer to put in money over the next for the next 18 months to 2 years?
Take a call for 2 years. We actually relook at it every quarter. So this quarter's runs are still going on. We haven't yet started the rebalance for the July beginning quarter, because otherwise you get wedded to your stories and you don't change your portfolio even when the facts change. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like Tata Elxsi was a great performer for us for 2-3 years, but we didn't think that this is like a forever stock, because nothing is a forever stock. So in fact, when we've held something for a while, we keep questioning that is the story over. So I mean, last 2.5 years, we have been overweight pharma, healthcare, and auto components, and then a little bit of auto also. And that broadly continues, at least till now. As I said, rebalance still to happen. The last quarter, but some additional pharma names came up, because pharma did well in 24, didn't do much in 25, and 26 again, it started doing well. So that we still continue. And then, of course, mostly it is bottom up, because we have a fairly diversified portfolio. So we have capital goods, we have chemicals, and some FMCG also. Banks, we are not overweight, but it would be higher than the average we would have held for 5 years. So it's a little bit higher than the average. I am always a nervous investor in banks and lenders. Just somebody said, Madam, aapka ye takiya kalam hai. I said, yes. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. It's a risky business where negative surprises abound, as even in the last 2 years, at least 3 or 4 major banks have had negative surprises. So that is how it is. So last time, I think beginning of this year, we added some power equipment and power. So in terms of change, that was one sector which started coming up more than earlier. So that would be broadly it. I mean, this year, of course, real estate has done well, but that we find a little risky sector. We don't have exposure there.
Wonderful. While markets are best explained in hindsight, they have to be invested and traded forward. At this point of time, is there a fresh exposure that you are mulling into India's IT sector, purely statistically?
So we do have some exposure to the IT sector. We are not overweight, but we do have exposure, because I thought the obituary of the sort of IT services was a bit premature, because I've seen that story play out so many times. Y2K time, it was that after Y2K, what will they do? Then it became that software as a service has come. This will take them out. Cloud, digitization, a lot of things were supposed to kind of be the end of IT. And even now, till now, if you see the results, It is not as if there's any disaster that has happened. Yes, they have to adapt, which they will adapt. I for 20 years, I have not liked the fact that they didn't move up the value chain, but within their defined product, they are able to pivot. And also remember, even if like AI becomes this transformational technology, no chief technology officer or CEO of a company is going to hand over the keys to AI, because that is simply too dangerous. So they will still need an intermediary in a sense. So my concern with IT is more on a macroeconomic front, that this was one sector that was the driver of employment for India for the last 25 years, both directly as well as indirectly. You know, you hire one IT person, along with that is food delivery, real estate, driver, nanny, all those things. So that is it's more of a macro concern. I don't have that much of a concern that the IT services companies will be able to pivot their business model. And really the valuations are quite attractive now.
Okay. Within your India portfolio, which has been an outperforming stock in the last 3 months, and do you intend to keep it?
I don't like to talk about individual stocks. I told you the broad strokes of where we are. So, and we always, I mean, our India product is called India Super 50. So, you know, we don't have a huge, we rarely, I mean, we don't start with anything more than 4% in a stock due to price actions, which might go up. So it is not like it is not like one or two stocks which really move the needle in terms of, because we are not we don't have like 12 stocks, which means that, you know, we are playing more skill than luck, because when you have 12 or 14 stocks, you are really playing luck.
Okay. At this point of time, would you be a little hopeful on the rupee?
In the short term, yes, because you have, you know, every time you open the kind of gates for NRIs, even though this time it is not as attractive as the previous NRI schemes. And, you know, so see, I had been talking even before this recent, like a few weeks ago, the crash in the rupee that came, that our interest rate policy will put pressure on the currency. I mean, this has been my last few quarters with the RBI policy, that we are not talking about it explicitly. But the fact is that India's interest rate had become too close to the Western, let us say the US interest rates. Typically, our interest rates used to be about 5 to 7% higher than the US interest rates. And now the difference was only 2.5% points. So these, you know, by this special FCNR scheme and all that, where you are taking the currency risk, you are essentially increasing this interest rate differential. But still, it is not, as I said, not as attractive, because really the differential is still small. That's the whole point. So earlier it was that the way NRIs would think that if I borrow 2 or 3 times and put it all in FCNR, I have a very nice looking return. This time they have to borrow 8 or 9 times to get any reasonable, very attractive looking return. So it's, but I mean, in the short term, every time NRIs do come through, and so in the short term, it eases the pressure on the rupee, because effectively you are increasing that interest rate differential, which had gone down a lot. But your longer term concerns and the pressure on the rupee, I don't think has gone away. So this is short term relief, yes. So at least, you know, you're not going down the way it was happening. I mean, structurally, your FDI, the net FDI has been doing very poorly. So nothing really is changing on that. And so this is an artificial way kind of to keep the portfolio flows high for this particular period. But you need something which is more structural than that. And also remittances will be impacted hopefully, I mean, now if the war thing goes away, not so much, but India has the highest remittances in the whole world, and just the Gulf alone was a big chunk of that. So that's another thing which is kind of a question mark this year.
Okay. How about oil? Is that something which is now no longer in the matrix of deciding factors on the short side? Is that something that's sort of eased out for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were long oil before the war started. So I mean, that was not a call on the war. It's just looked that the crude was due for a rally. So in early February, we had gone long crude. So now it all depends on whether again some US Iran thing starts or not. I mean, there have been so many rounds of this. Up and down in this whole whether the war is getting over, not getting over. So one fingers crossed that you know that it does get over, and then of course there's no direct pressure on crude immediately. So but let's see. I mean, there have been so many announcements and counter announcements in the last few months, and but of course for the US politics, two things matter. One is the price of gas or price of petrol at the petrol pump, and the other is interest rates. So both, that I think puts kind of the cap on how much of adventurism you go in for, because the 10-year interest rates were touching 20-year highs, and unlike 20 years ago, in the US has a lot more debt now. So I think that put the brake at times on the whole the warmongering. And the other, of course, as I said, is the price of petrol. So I think that will put a cap. So let's hope this gets sorted out.
In terms of a narrow bull market that was there in Korea, as also Japan and Taiwan, do you think that's over?
So it's not over. See, I mean, yet, I mean, as I said, you have to understand that semiconductor and semiconductor equipment are highly volatile industries. Japan, we are still a little overweight. So, I mean, and I'll tell you the reason they're overweight, that they're cyclical, because one, they are themselves very capital intensive. And most capital intensive industries, from hotels to cement to steel, are cyclical because the supply comes in chunks. And the other thing is that people are talking about the great growth this year. Yes, I mean, this year the demand is great and they have pricing power. I mean, आप एक तरह से कहें तो महंगा दाम मिल रहा है उनको. And that is because this investment into AI just by the top 3-4 companies this year is supposed to be, the estimates, from $800 billion to $1 trillion. And so that's why this demand, not just for semiconductors, but even companies have come out of woodwork like IBM and Dell and all that. So anybody supplying electronics, hardware, anything is doing very well. But these same 3-4 companies 2 years ago, their total capital expenditure used to be $150 billion. So this year, of course, they're doing this 800 to 1,000 billion. But the point is that when you are supplying capital equipment, you start from zero every year. So it is not like selling soap or toothpaste, where if you are selling 1,000 crores, next year you're not going to come down to 100 crores. It will be plus minus from that 1,000 crores. But when you're supplying capital equipment, and 2 years ago, those companies were investing, a fraction of what they're investing this year, who is to say that 2 years later, they will be still investing $1 trillion a year? And therefore, your market can actually shrink very dramatically. So that is the thing you have to understand. So you can't just, like, for example, I mean, I was laughing. Somebody said the PEG ratio, the PE by growth rate of these semiconductor stocks is looking fabulous. So it doesn't matter that the PE is high. I said, you don't have a clue. I mean, is the growth sustainable? That is the whole point.
Ma'am, one must take such comments with a room full of salt and move on, and offer sympathies quietly to the customers whose money such folks will be handling. On that note, we'll call it time. As always, it's a pleasure hosting you, and we look forward to meet in person. Thank you.